Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are here at the last panel discussion of the day one. I would like to invite Mr. Sumantra Bibhuti Barua, Consulting Editor, ET Auto, to moderate the discussion on charging, swapping, and powering ahead. Welcome, Sumantra. Please take the discussion ahead. Over to you.
Hello and a warm welcome to this session of the 2022 ET Auto EV Conclave. This panel discussion is on the theme of charging, swapping, and powering ahead. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this session, which I'm sure will be very interesting and enriching. And it's also my pleasure and privilege to introduce our esteemed panelists, starting with Mrs. Sulaja Firoda Motwani, founder and CEO, Kinetic Green, Mr. Pulkit Khurana, co-founder, Battery Smart, Mr. Anil Giri Raju, co-founder and COO, Bounce Infinity, Mr. Jyotiranjan Harichandran, co-founder, Bolt, and last but not least, Mr. Arun Shreyas Reddy, founder, Race Energy. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for sparing your time and participating in this panel discussion. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we are going to have, I'm sure, a very interesting and fruitful discussion around the theme of charging and swapping and powering ahead, which in India, as we all know, there is, for the matter, in the automotive industry, in this innovative and disruptive age, there is no one single silver bullet to address any challenge. There are multiple ways, especially with all the technology developments that are taking shape, and most of them are being led by startups, and some of who are present in this panel discussion. But to start off with, let me get the OEM perspective on this whole kind of solutions of powering EVs. No? And Kinetic is a brand which is, which doesn't need any introduction in India. And in this new age, it's really reinventing itself. In fact, it has already reinvented in the EV space with in the three-wheeler segment. And recently it has also made a foray into the two-wheeler space. So let's get Kinetic's, the OEM's perspective from Sulaja. Sulaja, tell us, I mean, as you have had a few years of good presence in the three-wheeler segment, you have just forayed into the two-wheeler segment as well. How do you see this, how do you address the challenge of getting the right fit or right option for the right segment in terms of powering these EVs?
So good morning, and very happy to be here on this panel, and hello to all my co-panelists. It's a very interesting topic that we have chosen for this panel, and I think the timing is very good as well. I firmly believe, we have been one of the pioneering companies in the EV sector. Today, of course, it's very fashionable to be an EV startup, but 5-6 years ago when we started, we were one of the very early players. There was no government policy which was clearly laid out. There was no supply chain to speak of. There was very little by way of charging or any other ecosystem. There was very little demand and awareness amongst customers. They had more doubts than acceptance for EV as a technology. So we have come a long way since then. But Kinetic Green worked at the ground level on all these areas, whether it was government policy or creating awareness, setting up a local supply chain, so on and so forth. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that now, in fact, the sector has made a lot of progress in the last 5 years, where many good products are available to the customers. More and more good products are going to be available to the customers. Customers' attitude towards EV has turned positive. From a push sale as an OEM, where we had to look for customers and create programs, welfare schemes and government programs to deploy our vehicles, we are now seeing that the showrooms of EV companies like Kinetic are full of customers. There is more demand than supply, in fact, in electric two-wheelers today. And I only imagine that the tide is turning towards EVs. In India, people speak about only three things when they meet. It's either films or cricket or automobiles. And now when they speak about automobiles, EV is definitely part of the chat. And people are seriously considering electric vehicles as a purchasing option. So I believe that the tide is turning towards EVs. We are at an inflection point. And certainly when it comes to light mobility, which is two-wheelers and three-wheelers, because of the price parity brought about by FAME, I think there is serious interest from customers in buying electric vehicles. So this is the right time that the industry players should sit down together and work together to create the EV ecosystem by way of charging and battery solutions. Because finally customers are going to require convenience. They're going to need the confidence that they can charge their EVs conveniently, and there are many different problems which need to be addressed. So I firmly believe that time has come for OEMs and charging and swapping providers to collaborate and find the solutions. I also believe that it's a time for collaboration and not for having closed systems or proprietary kind of solution thought process. This sector is evolving through collaboration. It's going to be a disruptive sector with great opportunity for everybody. So I think the more companies work together and co-create, share, I think it's going to provide a faster impetus to EV, electrification of the transport sector. So I think we will all benefit by working together. And last point I want to make is that there are solutions which are different solutions for different segments. It's not one solution fits all.
Absolutely.
And I think, for example, for light mobility, two-wheelers and three-wheelers, I firmly believe that battery swapping could emerge as a good solution for the next 5 to 7 years, where customers can mirror, the EV usage pattern to a ICE vehicle pattern, and the price parity will be even more pronounced if the vehicles are sold without batteries.
Batteries.
Also, when we are looking at a FAME regime coming to an end in the next couple of years, I think finding a way to have batteries sold separately on a pay-per-use basis and vehicles sold separately, I think would make great commercial case for the customers. So I think battery swapping would be a very good solution for light mobility. The other thing for the light mobility, I think, as by way of charging infrastructure, is that companies should also look at residential charging infrastructure, not only public, because most of the two-wheelers will be charged at home, and people are struggling, especially those who live in high rises, to make charging available, affordable. So if you can give solutions, where you can collaborate with the builders or whatever it is, ideas, come and set up the charging point for the customers, I think that is something that is required. And the last point I would say is that for cars, I think it's a different solution altogether. It's not about swapping. It's going to be something where a lot of innovation on fast charging is name of the game. And public infrastructure will be required. Highway infrastructure will be required. And then we're looking to a new kind of regime with hydrogen fuel and other things coming up. But I think I'm very happy to see a lot more startups in this space coming with an innovative solution. It's not about scale, it's going to be about innovation, it's going to be about collaboration. And I think if we work together, we can definitely together accelerate the EV adoption in the country, especially for electric two and electric three-wheelers. So I certainly look forward to ideas from all the other co-panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Sulaja. And you rightly said, in this disruptive era, collaboration is the name of the game. It's no longer an exception or exception. It's actually a common, increasingly becoming common practice. And I won't be surprised if after this EV conclave, some of your co-panelists also end up having collaboration with Kinetic Green.
We would welcome that.
Yes, indeed, for mutual benefits and also for growing the Indian EV industry. Anything that is that contributes to it is more than welcome and worth pursuing. You touched upon charging, and as you said, nowadays in almost every conversation, EVs is a topic, and no discussion around EVs is complete without charging infrastructure being talked about. So on that note, let me get in Jyotiranjan Harichandran, who is a co-founder of Bolt. I would refer to him as Jyoti. Jyoti, tell us about your kind of experience. How do you see this space evolving? I understand you are offering chargers price as low as 3,000 rupees.
Yeah. Thank you, Sumatra, for basically introducing me. And I completely agree with Sulaja also here. So the thing is, 90%, 80 to 90% of the charging is rather going to happen at home, like she pointed out. So the thing is, what we are focusing at Bolt is to empower people to build charging network for themselves as well as for their communities, right? We have done these partnerships with MyGate and Park Plus, where we are installing chargers at apartment places, and even the builders are completely now refurbishing their new apartments, which they are selling with new charging points at each parking lot. Like, this is something which we also didn't anticipate, and we are getting a lot of orders from the real estate sector itself. And as and when we move forward, we will see that a lot of buildings come built in with charging points. That'll be a necessary requirement, like how you have a gas pipeline or electricity connection. You will have a EV charging point in any of the apartments houses you're going to buy in the future. And if it's not present and you have already bought it, you will like the community with itself basically make sure that it's available at least at the visitor parking lot or something like that for consumers to use. In fact, I'll give you a few anecdotal evidences of parking points, charging points, which we have put in a few societies in Bangalore. So we have seen that the EV adoption has gone up in those societies where we have put up common use charging points in their visitor parking lots. In the last 2-3 months, essentially after we have installed, the percentage of adoption in those apartments has gone up from 1% to 2-3%, essentially. The thing is, it's a chicken and egg problem again. Like whether you build the charging network first, or basically the EVs will come first. We think we are at the infrastructure place, we are putting in a lot more charging points right now. And in fact, our aim is to put a charging point in every house, every office, every parking lot, empower these people to charge anywhere their vehicles are parked. Because if you look at it,
how big is your charging network infrastructure?
So
and at what rate do you plan to expand it?
So currently we have about 10,000 odd charging points. You can just download our app and you can see it right away. In Bangalore, we have more than 4,000 charging points, I think. In every city like Pune, Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, where we are operational in, I think we have added more than 1,000 charging points per city. We are expanding at a rate of about 250-300 per day currently, and by the year end we will be putting about 1 lakh charging points across India, and in the next couple of years the aim is to put 1 million charging points.
That's good to know. And pretty sure if the initial experience of the impact it's having in those societies where you've already put up these charging points, if there are any indication, I'm sure with this expansion of your network will also have a direct positive impact on the EV adoption rate in India as well. Here, let me bring in Bounce Infinity. Bounce Infinity, I mean, many of us would be aware that they started off as a shared mobility service and now evolved to becoming an OEM as well as they offering battery swapping services. Anil, tell us about your initial experience of in this new phase of being an OEM as well as a battery swapping service provider. What are the key takeaways that you have to share with us?
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be a part of this panel. I think for us, like you told, we started off as a shared mobility company, and being an OEM and building a battery infra came from our inherent need to set up the infra, because we didn't find the right form factor to run our business, nor did we find the right infra to run this business. And commute is such a basic problem that we were solving. It would only get solved by swapping as a solution. So that's how we kind of forayed into both working on building our own scooter, which was suited for an Indian use case, as well as also build an EV infrastructure around swapping. which definitely powered our mobility business initially, and now we are using the same infra to power our OEM business, as well as enable that same infra for other OEMs who would want to sell a bike or an auto without battery. Currently bounces into three verticals. One is shared mobility business, which we will continue to scale and expand to multiple cities. Second, being an OEM, where we sell vehicles to customers, electric vehicles to customers, which they can use it for their personal use. And third, battery as a service, which is laid down as an infra to support these two use cases. But in addition to this, we would also work with other OEMs to collaborate and enable them to sell bikes or.
So this service is brand agnostic?
Yes, this is brand agnostic as of now. It is not only for a bounce use case. We work with OEMs to integrate the batteries so that it is interoperable between our use case and their use case. So to give you a situation, the same battery can be used for a shared mobility fleet. It can be used for a bounce infinity fleet, and it can be used by another OEM, either on an auto or a two-wheeler, depending upon the use case.
And of course, as long as the form factor is the same, otherwise,
yes, you're right.
Okay, so here let me get in Arun Shreyas Reddy, who is a founder of Race Energy. Arun, what I want to understand from you, one of the key highlights of this year's union budget was the FM mentioning about a battery swapping policy, which could be announced in the near future. So, what are the key things you would like to see in that policy, which would really help not only the better adoption rate of this technology, but generally it will help fuel the Indian EV industry's growth significantly?
Right. Yeah. Firstly, thank you for having me here, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's very impressive to firstly hear about battery swapping being announced in the union budget. Right. I mean, the journey that we've had over the past 4 to 5 years, from swapping being so doubtful whether it would take off, to eventually kind of hearing the government sort of having an intention to come up with a policy to sort of help boost the adoption of EVs through swapping. I think that itself was a great announcement that was like very delightful for us to hear. So in general, I think broadly speaking, 2 to 3 categories how the policy could help us help the whole battery swapping ecosystem sort of take off and help in that EV adoption rate that is required, right? Typically, to start off with, I think the GST rate, right? So since the fact that the battery is sold without the vehicle, so the GST rate, and how depending on the state to state, again, it's kind of in the gray area. Whether you would you charge a 5% or would you charge an 18%? And again, what happens to the float? The batteries that are kept in extra in the pool for the swap to happen. So these batteries are typically always charged at 18%. So because of this, even though the fact that the battery is the heart of an electric vehicle, it is still being priced at an 18% GST rate. And we expect and we hope the government to sort of bring that down to 5%. Great boost to the pricing of the battery itself, right, straight away. So I think that is one thing that we hope for to come out. And also, in terms of the incentives, sort of to whatever the incentives that are being provided in the FAME to subsidy, to sort of be more clear and provide more clarity in the sense that how those would be applicable to a swapping platform, right? In a similar way as what is being put into the vehicles versus what's in the float, the subsidies sort of should be provided for these batteries in the float as well. So these are some things that we are looking forward to. And I think in terms of, they've also come out with something in the sense of standardization as well. While from a customer-centric standpoint, it's a really great concept. It is something that's, a technologically a really hard system or a hard solution to sort of pull out. In terms of deploying an interoperable standard, in terms of working with different chemistries, working with different kinds of batteries inside a fixed form factor, sort of restricts, the technological advancements that are happening, not just with the different chemistries that are coming up, but in terms of swapping as well. We're barely getting started. We're trying to get, we're reducing the volume year on year. And as I said, I think I mentioned this to you as well before. It sort of basically forces us to think inside the box rather than sort of thinking outside the box.
You are saying that while swapping policy is more than welcome, perhaps, and as you mentioned, your suggestion about the GST kind of rationalization, but you're saying that the standardizing interoperability could be a challenge because of these various developments, technological developments that are taking place, and therefore
Right.
that may not be such a good idea. Is that so?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, because I think we're very, very nascent in this industry. I mean, over the 4 years of development of our swappable batteries, we've gone through so many changes. From where we started off with the battery pack, year on year, we've been able to reduce the volume by 50%. We've been increasing the energy density by 20% year on year. And we are today the most energy dense swappable battery pack in the country. And we also want to push this by a good 20% right moving forward. So there's a lot of things that are there in the swapping space that are still yet to be discovered and sort of invented and explored. So by defining a volume and by defining a sort of a fixed barrier, and even to the connectors as well, right? Very, very nascent. I don't think of any swappable battery which has probably gone through 10,000 cycles of connectors, right? So they're very, very early in that sense. Pushing interoperability policy this soon will definitely hinder the development of the batteries and the swapping ecosystem.
Great. So let me get another opinion there in the same on the same topic. Pulkit Khurana, co-founder of Battery Smart, and Battery Smart, as I understand, has already completed about 1 million swaps. Is that correct, Pulkit?
Yeah. Thanks, Sumantra. Yeah, I think we did 1 million around 2 months back. Closer to 2 million now. We're growing at a very rapid pace.
So what's your take on what Arun has shared? I mean, yes, a battery swapping policy is more than welcome, but when it comes to interoperability standards, perhaps that may hinder the development of various technologies.
So I totally agree with Arun, right? So it's a unanimous opinion. If you talk to any OEM or you talk to any swapping operator, it's not beneficial at this stage. It's a very noble thought that all batteries should have one standard. India should have one standard of battery across all swapping, but it's too early to do that. All of us are experimenting on the form factors, on the chemistries. OEMs have different form factors in terms of the vehicle that where the battery would fit in. Everyone is using different connectors as well. I think what makes sense is to set contours around what is accepted as a swappable battery. Maybe lay out that this should be the maximum size, or this should be the minimum energy density, lay out certain safety guidelines around it, and also provide subsidies and GST at par, as Arun mentioned, right? That's a no-brainer. I mean, you have to create a level playing field for swapping to take off. We should be able to avail similar subsidies under FAME, similar GST outputs for ourselves. But setting one standard would really kill the innovation, not just on the product side as well, but also from a consumer point of view, right? It would not leave any differentiation at that point. It's only a few players, everyone just getting started, just scratching the surface. If you mandate one standard at that point, essentially every user is going to get similar battery everywhere. There is no differentiation in terms of product quality, in terms of pricing, in terms of service quality. We're basically killing the industry before it is born, right? And I think everyone has already shared those thoughts with Niti Aayog. We had a consultation session with them. Most of the players from India were there, and it was a unanimous opinion. It's up to Niti Aayog from here to take it forward. And in their draft note, they have recognized, I think they've recognized Bounce as well. They've recognized us as some of the key players who are driving this. And I'm sure Bounce has also shared their opinion. And we also have put forward our thoughts. So we'll wait to see how this pans out.
Sulaja, your take as an OEM in this interoperability, the standardization of that, do you think that will also kind of perhaps restrain certain developments and therefore have an not so good impact on the overall growth of the EV industry?
I think it's a double-edged sword, if you ask me, because if you do not have any interoperability, right, then there are two things that may happen. One is that either the OEMs And again, when I say OEMs, I would mean the large OEMs with deep financial pockets will probably then tend to create their own closed loops, right? Saying that, okay, I am so and so, and I'm going to create my own X thousand battery swapping stations by buying the equipment. I have the money, and I don't want to rely on any outside partners, because what if they don't, they don't provide sustainability, and my customers then will suffer, etc., etc. So then it again becomes a game where those who can create scale fast, right, will move. And it might also therefore hamper innovation and the startup ecosystem. This is one disadvantage of that. Whereas if you have interoperability, then customers can choose, which swapping platform they want to participate. Nobody's controlling that swapping platform. Customers can choose. So if you don't have interoperability, some of the larger players or OEMs or a large private equity fund owned fund can actually create, I would say, uh,
Exclusive network.
exclusive network, right? And that would hamper innovation and startup ecosystem. And the second thing is that, even for the customers, right? Then there is a little bit of lack of confidence in going for swapping, because they may have the doubt about what if this particular, swapping partner doesn't continue to be to work in my area. What if, they don't have enough density? Some of the smaller OEMs.
Or will I get the same quality of battery that I will get exchanged for?
Yeah, same quality, consistency, reliability, long term confidence in that network. um,
Okay.
that becomes a bit of a question mark. Now, on the other hand, if you have, that's for interoperability, to build customer confidence, and also to build a level playing field for not just few large players but many players to come in with innovation, because nobody can control, right? Now, if you don't have but if you have interoperability, then as some of the players have mentioned, how do you still retain differentiation?
Uh,
We as OEMs, we have recommended to Niti Aayog in the same forum that we should decide how to how to implement interoperability. It should basically be, according to us, connectors can be standardized, because that's kind of, like charging, right? You need to start standardizing the sockets and, charge the.
like your mobile phones, maybe.
Yeah, it's not really a differentiation room for that much, differentiating point. And for the batteries, like a maximum size possible. So if you have more efficient batteries, you can have smaller batteries in the larger container, so to speak, right? But the maximum size, so you can standardize basically in a way that customers can move across the swapping platforms, but each swapping provider or battery provider could still come with better technology, which will offer better pricing, which will offer more efficiency. So some kind of a golden mean to be found. Not saying that, okay, the battery should be 48-volt, it should be this chemistry, it should be exactly this, but saying that, okay, up to this size, up to this kind of a, form and factor, outer limit, so to speak. We believe that could be a golden mean where there is interoperability, but there's room for differentiation. And as an OEM, I think we are actually more for interoperability, because again, as I said in the beginning, we believe that this entire industry will grow through collaboration and not by having closed loop systems. Again, then we'll go back to the same ICE era where few players, with global scale are dominating the market. Because why shouldn't EV evolve as a completely different tech-based industry, with the new age kind of thought processes, aggregation of charging platforms, for example, somebody discussed. So I think the more you have ability to collaborate, more collaboration will happen. Otherwise, again, we are going back to an era where there will be few standard solutions and there will be more closed loop systems. So this is my thought process on it.
Anil, your take on it, because now you are both. You are a battery swapping service provider as well as an OEM. I think what Sulaja is suggesting, I think that could be perhaps be the middle path. Do you feel so too, or do you have a different viewpoint?
I think most of the panelists share the same opinion. But if you ask me, based on our interaction with Niti Aayog and the rest of the government, the objective of making standardization or bringing in standardization is to enable interoperability. Right? That's the objective with which standardization is being thought about. So directionally, I think it is in the right place. What our request, and I'm sure everybody in the panel here and the rest of the players have requested Niti Aayog, is to not specify something very rigid, right? To give a range of sorts, let's say in terms of the dimension or the connectors, not to specify a
You
particular.
mean to say that you set the target, the means to achieve the target, leave it to the players?
Yes, and then give a directional, push, like give a range of dimension, give a range of connectors. So directionally, people move towards a particular technology, and government, I think, do recognize the fast pace at which the technology is evolving. They do understand that specifying or standardizing a particular technology is not good for the overall development of the industry as such. So I think initial conversations with the government, the policy will most likely have a range of sorts defining and not specifying a particular technology.
Okay.
And hoping that's how the policy will come out as well.
I think that's a very good suggestion, and I'm sure the government will also take the feedback and will come up with design a policy which really kind of meets the true objective or the true need of the Indian industry, and I facilitate and also facilitate the growth of the market, as well as enhancing and enabling industry players to be not only get the scale but also to be of international standards. Arun, talking about swapping, this whole emerging battery swapping business, the market, how big do you think it could become in India? And also, if you can just compare it with, say, markets like Africa or similar markets similar to India, what prospects do you see? And I believe Race Energy also has some plans to go beyond the Indian market.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I think that would definitely be the end goal. But just to start off with the question that you asked, it's the swapping generally typically works when there's a requirement for heavy utilization of the vehicle, where there's standing idle and charging your vehicle is typically loss of revenue. So that's why it's seen a huge uptick in terms of commercial vehicles like auto rickshaws, e-rickshaws, and two-wheelers as well. I think that's where also Anil and Bounce has started, because the vehicle has to be being on the roads as much as possible. And then, of course, you have these, hybrid solutions in between. Again, a lot of people here on the panel are working in the sense that, you have this charging and swapping with the fact that you can take the battery along with you and, charge it at your home. And then, you have the option of swapping at any of the swapping stations as well. So this could typically work with, private users or commercial users who do not have access to proper charging infrastructure or at their home, would like to have some flexibility in both the options, right? And on the other complete end of the spectrum, where Jyoti is working on, is basically there's good amount of ample amount of time for the vehicles to rest, stay idle either at your home or your office, and typically follow some sort of fixed route. And the range of the vehicle being offered also is enough to do 3 to 4 days worth of travel comfortably, right? So so there's a whole wide spectrum in terms of where, on one end you have charging that works brilliantly, and on the other end, which is the commercial side, is typically where swapping works really well. So in that sense, it's the whole L3, the whole three-wheeler segment, majority of it, up to even 80% of the market would typically move towards a swapping solution moving forward. And then, the around 15-20%, having been to a lot of these auto rickshaw drivers' houses myself, having spoken to 400 to 500 drivers, and that's the basic understanding that we have, that the split would be somewhere in between, 20% split to a charging and 80% sort of split to swapping, and some hybrid solutions in between. And I think the similar use
in the two-wheeler segment, what is your
So to be honest, I think Anil would be a better person to give that answer in terms of the market split. But I think probably on the opposite side, I mean, the numbers would be reversed here. I think maybe 20% in swapping and 80% in charging. But again, Anil would be a better person to answer that question. I'll just answer the second question, and then, you can ask this question to Anil, right? I think in terms of the markets, we've seen, I mean, India is the largest manufacturer of auto rickshaws in the world, right? I mean, and most of these auto rickshaws are about typically pre-COVID era, 40-50% of the market, used to be export market, right? The production typically between 900,000 to 1 million units if we would manufacture. about 400 to 300,000 would be exported. And these would generally land up in Africa, or sometimes in Southeast Asia, and sometimes in Latin American countries as well. And what we've seen there is that even with the sort of in Africa especially, right? The petrol and the diesel over there is not up to the great standards. Electricity is also quite cheap over there. Power availability is very cheap, so it makes perfect sense for an electric vehicle, be it charging or swapping, right, to sort of get there and deploy the solutions over there because of these particular reasons. And our retrofit solutions also work out really well over there because the engines and the powertrains don't quite last well, similar to Indian market because of the quality of the fuel not being so great. And for that reason, just plucking out the engine and refurbishing it with like a completely new electric powertrain makes perfect sense with these kind of markets.
Okay, I see. And Jyoti, talking about the charging, as Arun was saying, the mix of, let's say, vehicles in terms of fixed batteries, which will depend on charging infrastructure and so operable. So how do you see the market evolving? Because your business will also be, kind of to a great extent influenced by the mix of vehicles, unless you also plan to get into battery swapping. Is there a plan there?
No, so we have another business vertical, but that's on the smart mobility, like what let's say Ola or Ather offer in their bike. So we offer those technologies to the OEMs and fleets. So that's another line of business, but that's not related to the battery swapping technology. So our technologies essentially at Bolt are built for the end consumers. Essentially, I think commercial is something which is seeing a tick off right now, and I think swapping makes a lot of sense there also. But if you look at consumer mindset, like for me, I have EVs, like I have bought almost all of the EVs, at least for R&D purposes. Generally, we don't want to kind of have the battery swapped or something as an end consumer perspective, because the thing is, you are paying lump sum amount for the entire vehicle, whether it is a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler. And I wanted to basically be parked at my place. And probably I only share with only my friends and family my vehicle, right? So it's more of a personal asset also, right? So the thing is, for the end users, when we look at it, we think like charging at their own homes would be like 80-90% of the market, and which is what we are also going after essentially, right?
Okay. You expect 80-90% of the end users, especially two-wheelers, to use their fixed charging at their home charging. Pulkit, you work with partners. Your business model, while you are also a battery swapping service provider like Race Energy, but your business model is different. So how do you plan to progress in this in terms of co-development of new technologies and bringing out new solutions? What is the roadmap?
Right. So we like to think ourselves as a swapping network operator, right? So our core competencies are in asset utilization. Essentially, every battery should get swapped as soon as it is charged. A customer should have zero wait time when they arrive at a swap station, right? So when we are trying to do that, as a lot of analysts said, it is imperative that we have a collaborative approach, because we are trying to become that de facto fuel station for EVs, right? And when we are doing that, we have to take a very open approach. We cannot bind ourselves with one OEM in terms of an exclusive customer. We cannot bind ourselves to one manufacturer of batteries either, right? What we have tried to do is take our own standard approach in terms of battery. So we do deploy one form factor and one specification of battery on the network, but we already serve 120 plus variants from a OEM perspective, right? So we are not a closed loop network in any sense. We are trying to be that open network where any OEM can plug and play. Also, in terms of interoperability, we have achieved that interoperability within the network. As in, the same batteries power a two-wheeler, the same batteries power a e-rickshaw, the same batteries power a L5 vehicle. So that is also interoperability. So interoperability is not just between networks, but also between vehicles. So we are trying to do that, and that is why a collaborative approach was important for us. We are backing on various large battery manufacturers on working towards the technology improvement, giving our inputs because we have a large touch base of customers. We serve more than 4,000 customers every day. So based on those learnings, we keep giving inputs on the design and improvements on the battery, but we are not doing that hardware ourselves, right? And that has made us a lot asset light and does have been able to scale at this pace in a very short span of time, because we are only doing one thing, which is setting up a network which can be utilized. It is accessible to people and at an affordable price to do a swap. Typically, customers pay us less than ₹1 per kilometer, including the cost of battery, right? So even the battery is provided by us. So that is what our approach has been.
And when it comes to battery swapping, of course, the segments of two-wheelers and three-wheelers are the most strongest candidates.
Correct.
Elsewhere, overseas, there are also examples of cars, passenger vehicles, and of course, in India also there were pilot projects which were done for buses for battery swapping. Do you expect these segments also to kind of become bigger when it comes to battery swapping, or do you think perhaps two and three wheelers, because of the scale of India, two and three wheelers will be the mainstay for battery swapping services?
So at least in the short run, we think two-wheelers and three-wheelers will be the scale. So 80 million two-wheelers and three-wheelers are expected to be on road, which would be electric in the next 3 to 4 years. India has 200 million two-wheelers, and we are the largest three-wheeler market in the world. So obviously the volumes will come from there. There's already price parity in terms of total cost of ownership on the back of the subsidies available. Cars are still picking up, and swapping in cars is a very different technology. You need a robotic arm, you need to do it under belly swapping. We would definitely want to bring that to India, but we don't think that the volumes are at a scale where that kind of investment is warranted today. But as it grows and as the volume of cars grow, we would definitely want to do swapping for cars as well. But I think it is at least 2 to 3 years away from now. It's happening well in China and West, as you rightly said, right?
Yes, and in these times, you never know. It's very difficult to predict the future. And as you said, perhaps now the cars could be the next big segment. But on that note, we have just about a couple of minutes left for this session. One round of last words from each one of you, starting with Sulaja. Your take on let's say if you take a horizon of, we are in 2022, say by 2030, how big a segment do you see for the two and three wheelers, electric? Of course, we are talking about, since those are the segments that you play in.
So, well, I would just say that we are at a very interesting time in the whole EV sector's emergence in India, and certainly at an inflection point. So 2 years ago, people were wondering if EV will be the future. I think today that topic has been put to rest. Certainly the EV train has left the station. It's only a question of how fast, not if, how quickly. And I'm very bullish about electrification of two and three wheeler segments, with or without subsidy. I think subsidy is a short-term support, but there is going to be so much innovation that, EVs are going to make a lot of sense for customers through different business models and technology over the years. So I think that for two-wheelers, a number of 10% by 2025 is very conservative. It could be more. And a number of around 50% by 2030 is what I would say. And that's because there is a large motorcycle segment out there. So as far as scooters and mopeds go, I think they will go electric much faster, which are mostly shorter distance commuting, urban commuting or small town commuting. Motorcycles may take a little longer because then you have the rural to urban commute and you have the performance bikes, where a lot more innovation has to come. But 50% by 2030 is a very conservative number according to me, and that's a huge number. India market will be around 4 crores two-wheelers by then. So it's a large number we're looking at. As far as three-wheelers go, I think it will be a faster penetration, especially for L3, of course, anyway, is almost all electric. Cycle rickshaws moving to e-rickshaws. And L5 also will go electric, maybe around 70% can be electric by 2030. It's the rural again, the rural connectivity from the bus depot to the villages where people are using the large format sharing kind of diesel vehicles, which might be the last leg. But again, the urban centers, I don't see why anybody should use a diesel vehicle when electric vehicles with different formats will be available, and providing a much lower cost of operations. So I'm very bullish on the prospects in the next 10 years. It's going to be a very exciting time. And again, it will create a lot of opportunities for many new entrepreneurs to come in many new areas of the EV ecosystem. And I want to wish them all the very best. And I would again leave them with the mantra of collaboration and working together to take electric vehicle as a course forward faster. So all the best to everyone.
On that note, now let me get the voices of the startup club, if I may call them. And as I said, in this age of collaboration, doesn't matter how the age doesn't matter. Even a startup with maybe barely a year or 2 year old may kind of. Now, there are examples of striking collaboration with well-established companies, some of whom are also referred to as legacy companies. So starting with you, Arun, now your outlook for the Indian EV industry now in the time period of say now between now and 2030.
Great. Yeah, I think I completely agree with Surja over there in terms of the numbers that she presented, and I think in certain sense, hopefully that's conservative, and I think there's definitely capacity to pull that off much deeper penetration in terms of the percentage of the vehicles that are being converted to electric, and especially with three-wheelers and L5 segments also, we're very bullish, and we're seeing great cost parity in the sense that the operational cost, the cost of converting or adopting an electric vehicle upfront has also come down now with swapping much lower than buying a new IC engine vehicle, and at the same time providing a per kilometer cost much cheaper than diesel or petrol, and even cheaper than CNG in certain instances, right? So that kind of cost reduction and cost comparison, although we always knew that the total cost of ownership was always lower for an electric vehicle, but giving on a per kilometer and per energy basis through swapping to these guys, they always live on a day-to-day basis, and then they now can see that it's much cheaper to utilize that. So we've already reached that situation where we are cheaper, and the drivers are realizing it's cheaper to use an electric vehicle. So I think this from now on, it's all about how fast we can bring in the scale, how fast we can go from manufacturing 100 vehicles a month to doing a 10,000 vehicles a month kind of a number. And again, this can be definitely be fast tracked through subsidies, through support from the government, through collaboration, as Suraj mentioned. And it's all about if we can achieve something like a 10,000 per month kind of a number and multiple startups with OEMs, I think at least rolling out a good 90%. Sales happening as electric vehicles can happen within the next 5 to 7 years itself, and then the population can from there on can be converted completely.
Okay. Thank you there, Arun. Anil, say if you look at the horizon of 2030 of your three business verticals, which one? How do you see them in terms of your contribution to the overall business of bonds?
I think they're all in the space of EV, and I'm sure they're all prosper. I think EV is definitely going to happen. Like the rest of the panel told, it's just a matter of time. It is definitely going to happen. I think fundamentally, if you see as a user, they would choose any of this solution as a mode of commute, and which is very, very basic for any of us. And whichever solution offers them the most reliable and the cheapest are the ones that will get adopted at scale, and
right.
That's happened traditionally as well. And EV is that solution right now, with so much happening around the fuel prices and them only going up. EV definitely is the right solution. I think the ecosystem has emerged in the right time with the right technology in place. Swapping, charging, I think both of them will prosper. Each of us have our own thoughts around what will work, but I think it will evolve. Both of them will evolve. But EV adoption, I think, will definitely happen by 2030. At least I'm very bullish. Right now in India, we sell close to about 16 to 18 million vehicles a year. I'm guessing at least 80% of them, especially on the two-wheeler and three-wheeler segment, will be EV. And I'm also quite bullish on the four-wheeler space, mainly because of the cost at which the fuel prices are increasing, the rate at which the fuel prices are increasing.
Could it be that bounce enters the four-wheeler space also by then, by 2030?
Yeah, you never know.
Okay, never know. Pulkit, your take on the overall composition and the share of swappable batteries and fixed batteries, let's say.
So I think China was able to completely do electrification of two-wheelers within 5 years, right? So just to take that perspective, I think 8 years is a very long time, and it is always very difficult to visualize or internalize a exponential growth when it happens, and we have already crossed that inflection point. So it could, everyone is right in that sense. I mean, and we might look back and say we were too conservative and it was all electric in 2030. Even that is a possibility. So I think 8 years is a very long time, and definitely two-wheeler and three-wheeler space, there is a possibility it could be all electric by 2030.
Last but not least, Jyoti, the charging infrastructure, the very crucial kind of piece of the whole puzzle. So how big a network do you think India would have, let's say, okay, 2030 is a long time, but let's say by 2025 or so. And do you plan to by then get into some adjacent spaces also?
Maybe we'll see. But the thing is, I think with every EV sold, there will be some charging point which will be installed, or some swapping station which has to be installed, right? Like if you're looking at a total number of vehicle of, let's say, 2 million to 3 million every year, which is 80% is what I would also say in terms of adoption, then we would have already like about, I suppose about 10 to 20 million EVs running on the road in the next few years itself. I think every EV will need a charging point, and you need to basically build that out. So probably millions of charging points across India in the next few years.
It's a good business potential for someone like Bolt as well there, right? So,
yeah.
On that note, we have just now kind of run out of time, and thank you very much, Sulaja, Arun, Anil, Jyoti, and Pulkit for sharing your very valuable insights, your very interesting viewpoints, as well as some very, very interesting, very pertinent and very valuable kind of thoughts, which will also serve as maybe inputs, especially when it comes to policy designing, especially around battery swapping and interoperability. So thank you very much. I absolutely enjoyed conducting this discussion, and I'm sure all the attendees would also agree with me that it was a very, very fruitful and enriching discussion. On that note, thank you very much once again, everyone, and wishing you all the very best.
Thank you everyone for sharing your viewpoints. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the day one of the ET Auto EV Conclave 2022. I hope you all like the content and the topics selected for this conclave. This is not all. There's a lot more yet to unravel for day two. I would like to thank all the speakers for sparing the valuable time for this conclave. Thank you to all the participants for their engagement and for being enthusiastic. Thank you to all the partners for all the support. Once again, thank you to all of you. See you all tomorrow for day two. Till then, I'm your host, Annie Fatima, signing off. Take care and stay safe.